Good morning, Patriots. How are you doing today? This is Mike the Patriot coming to you live from the downtown metropolis of LaMonte, Missouri. I hope you guys are having a great day wherever you are at. It is, unseasonably warm here in central Missouri. It's supposed to be in the 60s today. It's thicker than pea soup for the fog today. And massive storms in Southern California. I don't know if y'all seen that. Something that I wanted to point out, and I had it on my list, but I feel like I'm going to talk about it right now. Let me see if I can't pull up. But I noticed a video. So I've talked to you about, I grew up in California. I experienced California weather. It's not unusual, but it's not often either. I grew up in the Antelope Valley in Southern California, which is just over the hills from LA, the high desert. In the high desert, we have these gullies or washouts or dry riverbeds, which they tend to build houses in, which is kind of dumb in my opinion. We have the San Gabriel Mountains on one side and the Tehachapi Mountains on the other side. That makes the Antelope Valley. Some of the San Gabriel Mountains are so high that they go above the tree line. There's a Mount Baldy out there. The reason they call it that is because in the wintertime when the snow falls, you can see that it has no trees on it. You can also see the ski resorts from my hometown shining in the lights at night, but that's another story out there, Big Bear and whatnot. So the San Gabriel Mountains, it will rain. And when it rains, the water doesn't stay on the mountains. It floods. So here's what's going on in California. First, we'll get to the word of the day in a second. Here's what's going on in California.
a Fox weather alert. Right now, much of Southern California is under a state of emergency.
Oh my gosh, it sounds like the Chipmunks. Let's slow it down just a little bit. What do you say?
The region faces one final day of heavy rain. Video shows fast-moving floodwaters ripping through parts of San Bernardino County yesterday, prompting evacuation orders. And crews are moving to reopen the busy 5 freeway that was shut down in both directions after major Christmas Eve flooding. Officials are asking folks to limit unnecessary travel.
Okay, major flooding. It's, oh my God, we're all going to die. It's, oh, now, we had a saying growing up in Southern California in the high desert. I want to show you something. Let's see, man, I got to find a better pic. Right there. Anybody know what this is? Anybody? There's probably a better, well, no. There's a better picture of it, a little bit clearer. You know what these are? These trees right here. You know what those are? Anybody? Let me put that on the big screen so you can see. What are these trees? What are these trees right here? Right there. What are those? Northern San Bernardino County, or Eastern San Bernardino County, on the other side of the San Gabriel Mountains, up by Victorville. That's where these floods are happening. How do I know that? Because of those trees that only grow certain places in the world. The high deserts of California and Israel. They're called Joshua trees. And you see, what you have here is you have a dry creek bed or a dry river bed that is dry 99.999% of the time, except for when we get these rains this time of year. And we only get these rains this time of year where it's this much rain. See, we have the saying, I was going to say, that it rains 7 inches a year in the Allen Valley, usually on the same day. It is true. They only get this about every 10 years or so. Do they get these kind of storms? They line up right. Has to do with the El Nino and the El Nino and all that kind of stuff. We only get it certain times a year. And only every few years, every so often. But it does happen. It's a normal occurrence. The reason why there's dried up, washed out creek beds and river beds in the high desert is because once in a while it rains. Duh. So here's a hint. If you live in a dried out creek bed in the deserts of California, move. That's dumb. Just saying. You know, it's just like all the movie stars who build their houses on the sand dunes. They're big cliffs, but they're nothing but sand overlooking the ocean in Malibu. Oh, it's a beautiful view. The sun sets. It's awesome most of the time, except for when we get these kind of storms. Now, we didn't call them rivers, what do they call them? Mediocre, whatever, rivers. We didn't call them this, just like we didn't call it the bomb cyclone, which we're going to get in January and February. We used to call that winter. We didn't call it this river of storms or whatever they're calling it now to make you fearful and scared. Oh my God, it's global warming. We didn't call it that. We called it weather. And the El Nino cycling back and forth causes, when one's changing to the other or something, I don't know which is which, but every 10 years or so, you can count on these storms to hit California, Oregon, and Washington with lots and lots and lots of rain. They're talking 11, 12, 20 feet of snow in the mountains every so often. By the way, Kim Clement predicted that you're suffering from a drought in California, but God's going to break that drought when the things start kicking off. This is the day that the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. And the word of the day, as given to us by Maureen in the Woods, is Romans 8:19 through 28. Romans 8:19 through 28. Make sure you crack open the Bible, see what God has for you today, because God is absolutely good all the time. And Programming note, won't do a show after show today. Still in the festive holiday spirit, things going on. But this show today might go a little bit longer. And I just want to say this. I just want to say this. So I noticed that a couple of friends of mine who used to be in Team National, some of you know who I'm talking about, and some of you don't know who I'm talking about, are going on and on and on about the new thing that's launching. Cool. I'm not bashing any company. We just launched our own new thing. And I went and figured out what it was he was talking about without looking at it, just because, although, believe it or not, Brad is savvy enough to control his Facebook page, other highfalutin people are not. Note to self. In this type of business, you want to be able to control the information that gets to you. Some old guys that are doing this don't know how to control their Facebook page. I'm just saying, you can set up things so things can't be posted on your Facebook page to give away all your secrets. Y'all know I'm an open book. I tell you exactly how I'm doing, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. When I talk about the products that I'm representing, I don't lie to you. I don't hide nothing from you. I tell you exactly how it is. So I just wanted to say this about, I just want to say this one thing about that, okay? When someone tells you in this industry, in the network marketing industry, that there's no recruiting while they're trying to recruit you, now, do they have a dual-sided compensation plan? I don't know. You can make money selling the chocolate sauce that makes your pants fall off. And I'm testing to it. I'm down a couple more pounds over the Christmas holidays. You can make money just selling the product. You can. And you can make money recruiting. There's two different ways. And I'm sure you can with them too. But the statement of you don't have to recruit, it just sells itself. Everybody in network marketing says that, and everybody in network marketing is lying to you. God is good all the time. Just remember that. Trust in him. Seek his advice before you jump into anything. And if you want to jump in with those guys, be my guest. I'm not going to talk about what their products are because I checked it out. I'll tell you, I'll stick in where I'm at for multiple reasons that I won't get into. If you want to know the private story, message me. PatriotMikeShow@gmail.com. I'll tell you. Well, I won't tell you. I don't know. Maybe I'll tell you. Maybe I won't. I'm not going to tell you publicly, though. It goes way, way back to the original company I met these folks. That's what it goes to. So anyways, let me just say this. We're kicking off a new year. Lots of new things coming. If you want to be a part of something where you have an opportunity, no worky, no payee, to make a few bucks. And if you want to be able to lose a few pounds before, you got to wear bikini season. Not wearing a bikini myself, but if you want to, let me know. I can help you with that. All right, moving on. Sorry about that. Just want to go down that road. It's just something I was looking at yesterday evening and going, what is this all about? And then I figured it out. So I tell you. Now, I'm very vague because I didn't tell you what I found, but I'm not going to, because I'm not going to bash somebody else's company or promote somebody else's company or talk bad about people that I know or talk good about people I know who are competing against me. I'm not going to do that. It's not the way that it works. I don't know. Sometimes things get a bad rap when they shouldn't. All right. You don't want to see me. I don't want to see you. No, Marine. You just keep that. You Marines, I tell you what. All right. Breaking news coming out. The U.S. economy grows by 4.3% in third quarter, much more than expected. Because the experts never expect the expected, because the figures don't lie, but liars figure, because the experts are all politicized and they have no idea what they're talking about. Period. End of statement. They don't know nothing about nothing. Abraham Lincoln once said, asked an economist, he said, so what's the economy going to do the next year? And the economist went, well, if this and this happens, the economy's going to be good. And he goes, so I can assume the economy is going to be good. And the economist says, no. On the other hand, if this and this happens, the economy will be bad. And Abraham Lincoln says, what we need around here are some good one-handed economists. Anyways, gotta love it. So the economy's taking off. Isn't it wonderful? And the experts are shocked. Shocked, I tell you. How did this happen? The U.S. economy grew much greater than expected pace in third quarter, boosted by strong consumer spending. A delayed report released Tuesday showed U.S. gross domestic product, the sum of goods and services produced in a sprawling U.S. economy, expanded by 4.3% in July to September period. The Commerce Department said in its initial reading of third quarter growth, economists polled by Dow Jones expect a gain of 3.2%. Consumer spending expanded by 3.5% in the third quarter after raising 2.5% in the second quarter. Increases in exports and government spending also boosted growth, while, what's this? What? What? Increases in what? What does that say, ladies and gentlemen? But I thought we were going to go into a recession because of the tariffs, but we had to increase exports? Wonder why. While a smaller dip in private fixed investment helped as well. The report originally had been scheduled to release October 30th, but was delayed by the government shutdown. This release also replaces the second estimate that was set to drop on November 26th. The department's Bureau of Economic Analysis will release one final estimate later. By the way, they really don't know. They're guesstimating. A measure of growth called real final sales to private domestic purchases rose 3% in the quarter, up 0.1%, a 0.1 percent point from the prior period. Federal Reserve policymakers watch the data point closely for signs of consumer demand, which means inflation, which means we're all going to die. In reality, none of these idiots know what they're doing, and they're not there to protect you. They're not. They're there to protect them and their assets and their pocketbooks. Donald Trump nails it when he says why the prices went up or why the growth happened. The tariffs are responsible for the great USA economy numbers just announced. Excuse me. And they'll only get better. Also, no inflation and great national security. Pray for the U.S. Supreme Court, President Donald J. Trump, because they're about to rule on the tariffs. Here's another, just to let you know. It says, Trump boom, U.S. economy grows 4.3%, fastest in 2 years, smashing expectations. Smashing. Here's some more from Donald Trump. Third quarter GDP came in at 4.3, blowing past expectations of 3.2. 60 of 61 Bloomberg economists got it wrong, but Trump and some of other geniuses got it right. The success is due to good government and tariffs. Consumer spending is strong. Net exports are way up. Imports and trade deficits are way down. There is no inflation because of my tax bill, the great big beautiful bill. And tariff investment is setting records. The Trump economic golden age is full steam ahead. You haven't seen anything yet. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. President Donald J. Trump. Yes. Anyways, there he is touting his success, to which the media, no, he had nothing to do with it. It's Joe Biden's economy finally kicking in. You notice how they always say that? It's Joe Biden's economy finally kicking. No, it has nothing to do with Joe Biden. It is the undoing of Joe Biden's economy finally kicking in. They'll take credit for it for the next 3 years. Actually, what they're doing, we're in an active psyop campaign right now to make the Republicans, and the Republicans are in on it because they want to lose too, because there's suckers and losers who don't know how to win and don't know what to do with it when they win, quoting Rush Limbaugh from, I don't know, 1992. It's been that long. Yes, it has. Now, we've known that these idiots don't know what they're doing, period, end of statement. Or their plans, destroying us on purpose. Yeah, I said it. Don't really care. They're going to do everything in their power. Everything in their power. S&P 500 hit above 6,000 on Friday for the first time. Right now, it's trading at 6,940. Actually, it's 6,9 is where it hit. Almost 7,000, record high for the S&P 500. And now it's trading at 6,938 right now. Will it hit 7,000 before the end of the year? I don't know. I don't know. But it's coming. It's coming. Platinum. Palladium is a combination, as an alloy. A platinum hit $2,241. It's up 20%. So the other precious metals are kicking in. Of course, taxation. There's a talk about taxation. It says, follow along. You work, you're taxed. The government sends $300 billion. That's X amount. That's an X amount of Bitcoin of your tax dollars to college fund facilities. College facilities are 90% Democrat. So 90% of political donations from facilities go to Democrat politicians. Americans are forced to pay Democrats. It's that simple. Money laundering. By the way, when Joe Biden was forgiving college debt, he was not helping out the colleges. Didn't help the colleges one bit. They already got their money. No, he was bailing out the banks without you knowing it. JM Bullion. JM Bullion is running short or is out of stock of large 1 kilo bars or bigger. Silver is moving in mass quantities. Silver is moving. It says JM Bullion is out of kilo silver bars. Only a few 100-ounce bars remain, like around 20. It says that it says you can go on there and make like an absurd purchase. Like, I want to buy 800 100-ounce bars, and it will tell you, well, we've only got 14 left in stock. That's how he knows. That's how he knows that. Well, Mimi says Washington State put a 10% tax on the sale of silver within the state. By American circulated silver coinage, they can't tax it. It's against federal law. What I mean by that, your silver dollars, your half dollars, your quarters, your dimes, those are American currency, and it's not taxed because it's not a sale. You're trading one form of currency for another form of currency. That's all you're doing. So it's not taxable. So out there in Washington State, there's how you do it. That's how you get around that law. Now, if you buy silver eagles, or if you buy silver bullion, or if you buy silver generic coins, like whatever, there's all kinds of stuff out there you could buy. That's taxable. Just remember that. They can't tax coins. Just wanted to let you know that. Anywhere that happens, they can't tax coins. I mean, I suppose they can try. But here, the other thing is when you, trade silver with your friend, but they don't know won't hurt them, right? There's more ways than one. Anyways, Robert Kalinowski's pointing something out that's going on. You know, I've been telling you of a correction in the economy. Many other prophets have been telling you, many experts in the industry are telling you all about a correction in the economy coming. It has to change, it has to fix. One of the ways that they talk about it happening is a liquidity crunch in the bond market. I think it's going to be all encompassing. I think that they're going to try to, by they, I mean the Uniparty, the deep state, the World Economic Forum types, whoever they are, they're going to try to kick this off. They're going to try to kick this off. And so, but they don't know what's coming after, because God is going to cause this to be instead of a tidal wave, it's going to be an earthquake. Instead of taking down and restructuring and enabling them to I got some stuff coming up to talk about how the 2008 economic crisis that happened, you know, where George W. Bush had to destroy capitalism in order to save it. How what happened because of that is they protected themselves and they got richer and you got screwed. They transferred their hurt to the American people, and we're still suffering from that. But here's Robert Kalinowski talking about what's going on in Japan. Japan is about to dump $750 billion of U.S. bonds tonight. Now, this was Friday. So this has probably already happened. But that's not what's actually happening. The truth is still dangerous. This is why financial education matters. Headlines are designed to scare you. Markets are moved by mechanics. Japan isn't announcing a sudden bond dump. What's happening tonight is a routine release from Japan's Ministry of Finance, a weekly report showing that Japan investors already did a last week in foreign bonds and stocks. Japan is announcing a sudden, I already said that. Read it, it's down here. It's a scoreboard, not an emergency alert. Here's what people get confused and why panic spreads so fast. When you see a number like 356 billion sold last time, most of the time that number is actually in yen, not dollars. So 356 billion is closer to 3 billion. That's a huge difference. It is. So no, Japan is not pressing a red button tonight to unload 750 billion in US treasuries. But there's a part that does matter and why sophisticated investors are paying attention. Japan is raising interest rates. After decades of zero interest rates or below, like negative interest rates, the Bank of Japan has begun tightening that changes global funding dynamics. For years, investors borrowed cheap yen and invested elsewhere, US bonds, stocks, real estate, crypto. Now, let me just stop right there and explain what he just said. You could go to Japan and you could borrow yen. You could convert to yen at 0%. So you could borrow at 0% or near 0% from banks in yen. Then you could turn around and buy US bonds, stocks, real estate, and crypto with that money you borrowed for next to nothing. You just convert it back to the dollar. Way, way, way cheaper. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying right there. So the volume of money, velocity of money was happening in large proportion is that you could go someplace if you were a high investor and borrow $1 million or $1 billion or however much in yen and then convert that to whatever euros or dollars, wherever you're buying it, wherever you're investing it, and buy bonds, stocks, real estate, crypto. Yeah, you could have borrowed at 0% $1 million in yen and then bought crypto with it 10 years ago. You see where I'm going with that? That's what he's talking about. It says, for years, investors borrowed cheap yen, invested it elsewhere, U.S. bonds, stocks, real estate, and crypto. That's called yen carry trade. Japanese rates, it says Japanese rates rise, the yen strengthens, funding gets more expensive, leverage starts to unwind. That means leverage means borrowed money, means they can't play the games they've been playing, and all of a sudden the system that is built on cheap money starts to unwind, starts to collapse, starts to stress. That's where the stress comes from. Not from one dramatic bond dump, but from the slow pressure of liquidity. That's what I'm talking about, liquidity. We're going to have a liquidity crisis. When funding tightens, treasury yields can raise, risk assets can wobble, highly leveraged players feel the pain. That's people who have massive debt to play in the markets, to invest and whatnot. This is how markets actually break, not from headlines, from plumbing. When the water dries up in the plumbing system. Most people wait for the crash announcement. The rich watch. Interest rates, currency moves, capital flows, funding costs. Because markets don't collapse when someone sells everything. They crack when cheap money disappears. So if tonight's data shows Japan investors reduce in foreign bond exposure, it's not a panic signal, it's a trend signal. It tells you capital is reassessing risk in a higher rate world. In other words, it's going to start costing more money to do business around the world. And here's the real lesson my rich dad taught me. Don't react to noise, understand the system. The people who lose money chase headlines. The people who keep money study incentives. Why are people doing what they're doing? Don't react to noise. I've told you this a million times. Stop reacting and act. Be prepared. The people who lose money chase headlines. The people who keep money study. It said that Japan doesn't need to dump trillions overnight to matter. All it needs to do is change the cost of money. And once that changes, everything else eventually adjusts. That's how financial earthquakes really start, quietly. So what he's talking about is a reassessment of value, a reassigning in the marketplace of value of what things cost in real money. Well, what do you mean by it? What does that mean? What's real money? Well, I'll tell you what's not real money. The US dollar is not real money. So what's happening when you see the dollar go up and the dollar go down, when you see your gas prices go up, your gas prices go down, when you see the price at the grocery store go up and the price at the grocery store go down, that's not what to pay attention to. What's to pay attention to is the value overall of your dollar. It's reassessing to reality in the marketplace. The reality is things are now becoming more expensive. And how does this show itself is how you should be asking this question. And I will show you just how it is showing itself right here. US dollar was trading this weekend at 75.20. It's been up above 75 and down below 75 this morning. Right now it's at 74.60. What did I say? US dollar, US silver price. By the way, there's more subterfuge going on in the silver price right now than ever before. There is a uncracking and a breaking of the system that controls the price of silver and gold, and it's happening right now as we speak. Shanghai silver, it's 75 at the COMEX, but Shanghai silver is paying $80 an ounce in Shanghai. You know what's happening right now? A mass migration of silver. Because if you could buy it at the COMEX, if you could get it, that's why they're out of the 1 kilo bars. If you could buy it at the COMEX, for $75 plus premium and sell it to China for $80, you make $5 a bar. Now there's costs and premiums in that. If you're just ending up with $1 a bar and you do in a day $1 million in 1 million ounces, you just made $1 million in one day. Just consider what I'm saying to you. Liquidity, money is like water. It flows to the least resistance. At $80 an ounce, China is sucking up all the silver. I'm just saying, that's the reality of it.
Look, I'm trying to force.
Well, you might say, but Mike, my investment broker. Well, there's a reason why they call them brokers. Just saying. I'm not telling you to buy or sell or do anything. I'm not telling you to do anything. Here's the Chicago futures this weekend. Chicago futures were $71, while Shanghai was $79 or $80. It's almost $10 difference. So you buy the futures, and then you sell the futures to Shanghai. So you buy them at 71. It is trading places. You buy it at 71, you sell it for 80. Then when you take delivery, you send it over there and you get paid. And you get the difference. That's what's happening. I mean, this stuff is moving crazy like. This stuff is moving crazy like.
Teens and
Lost people's.
if you
We're going to do. I'm not going to buy health insurance anymore.
Off this break. Hold on. There we go. Sorry about that. And what does that mean for you and me? China is no longer exporting silver. Well, why would you when you're getting $80 to buy it? No, they're trying to corner the market. This is what it means for you and me.
Exporting goods, doing a little Christmas shopping. Check this out. Can somebody please tell me what's going on? Those are basketballs.
Because they don't want your stupid, worthless money. Their basketballs are worth more to them. I mean, and it's Christmas time, and Dick's Sporting Goods taking advantage of, I got to get my son a basketball. Whatever. The price is only what somebody's willing to pay, by the way. I don't ever blame the seller for the price. Ever. Never, ever. People going, I can't believe how much this costs. Unless you're talking about government, completely controlled government economies like healthcare. That's a whole nother story. But in the marketplace, when you go into the mall or the Dick's or I'm turning my little fan on, it's kind of stuffy. And it's supposed to be 90,000 degrees outside on the day after Christmas and humid as all get out. It's like spring. But guess what? This time of year, when you have really warm weather, you get really, really cold weather in a few days because we live in the middle where the winds come from the south. It gets warm. Winds come from the north. Thanks, Aaron. Winds come from the north. It gets cold. It's just, that's the way it works. But the price of something is what the consumer is willing to pay for. You know, we used to run, we don't run it actively run anymore. We started at the world's first, according to Facebook market auction page. Now there's lots of them, copy them all over the place now. There's some way bigger than ours, but we're the first. I just checked Amazon. The average basketball is $25. High-end ones is $65. Yeah, but you can't get them Christmas Eve now, can you? That's what that's about. That's what that's about. It's about supply and demand. I can supply it today. Amazon can get it there next day, which would be after Christmas. That's what that's about. Again, I'm not mad at the people selling. It's the suckers paying $99 to $125 for a basketball that's causing that price to be. If no one buys those basketballs, they'll go on sale next week for half price, which is still cheaper to go on to Amazon, but it is what it is. I don't like dicks anyways. And he's asking, why is this so high? Why are the prices so high? Well, one of the reasons is this. That's one of the reasons the prices are so high. No, I don't think so. Tard says political leaders should be decided by their basketball skills. No, I've heard some of them basketball players talk. No, I don't think so. No. Could you imagine Shaquille O'Neal? Actually, he's way more brilliant than he acts because he's a billionaire, captain of industry, owns all kinds of franchises and businesses, and he's an angel investor. If you know what that is, that's where a guy who has excess money goes in and pays a little excess to help struggling businesses to kind of like Shark Tank, but without the drama. Kind of like that. That's what he is. So you gotta like Shaq. You gotta like him. I don't have complaints, but I don't want him making our decisions politically. I don't want that. I think I got one more. Here's Peter Schiff, who I'm not a big fan of, but he does say something here. He says, imagine living in America before any income tax or payroll taxes. Everything you earned, you kept. You didn't have to track every dollar. Imagine. Keep books. Well, you still have to keep books. I mean, not on a personal level. Even on you kind of need to know where your money's going. Or hire lawyers and accountants to comply. You weren't accountable to the government for your labor. That is the number one point right there. That is the number one point. You are accountable to your government for your labor. You owned it. You were truly free. You are accountable to the government for your labor because the money that you make is from the labor you produce. It's just the way it is. It's a reality. And they confiscate 50% of it, you slave. It says right here that the Chinese price for silver has just blew out a record, just blew out to record wide. Anyways, it says the market, China's silver market snapped through the moon. Now, here's an interesting post. So Patrick Bryan said that he's the overstock.com guy, right? He says, a day ago, I responded to a query by saying Trump could give me a temporary 119-day spot at the SEC chair, but I could fix it in 19 days. He says it was a joke, hyperbole. I have less than zero interest. If nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve. Plus, I already invented the solution, T0. So he's marketing his own coin or something. But that's not why I want to talk to you. It's this. Then he posted this. Remember the time I clubbed Wall Street like a baby seal? Exposed how 75% of Goldman's revenue came from shenanigans and won $35 million? News is breaking that will make Wall Street victory look like a game of marbles. Now, he just posted this with a link. The link was to a 2010 Matt Taibbi article that I found to be really interesting reading. Now, Matt Taibbi, who's he? He's the one that talked about over on X. He's a Democrat who talked about over on X all the government censorship that was going on X and other media platforms. Remember him breaking all the stories about a year ago after Elon Musk bought X? Well, Matt Taibbi, April 5th, 2010. What was going on in 2010? The collapse of our economic system, where George W. Bush had to destroy capitalism to save capitalism, then turn the reins over to Barack Hussein Obama, who proceeded to rip us off. Oh, man. Let me tell you something. Mike has been on here saying that it's all coming January, February, March. Amanda Grace just said, she just said that it's going to get really big in January. She's echoing Mike, and I don't think they've talked. That February, she had a word for it, was going to accelerate, and that March was going to be a roaring lion. Could she be wrong? Sure. Could Mike be wrong? Maybe. But I want you to just want to point out something that happened. So we know what happened in 2007, 8, 9, 10. As government nationalized our banking system, our loaning system, you can't get a home loan without the government involved now. You can't get a student loan from anywhere but the government. By the way, there's news on that front. Did you hear? Starting January 1st, Donald Trump's administration will be garnishing the wages of people who are delinquent on their student loans. Joe Biden, Barack Obama, same thing. Joe Biden had been paying off people's student loans. Yay! But in reality, what he was doing was bailing out the banks. Now the government's going after those delinquent loans. Don't pay your student loan. Mm-hmm. You can't be a student without a loan. Mm-hmm. Matt Taibbi, April 5th, 2010, Wall Street's naked swindle. A scheme to flood the market with counterfeit stocks helped kill Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers. And the feds have yet to bust the culprits. They still haven't, by the way. It's 2025, 15 years later from this article. And Patrick Bryan just brought it back up. Yes, he did. In 2005, complaints from investors about naked short selling finally promoted the SEC to try to curb the scam. A new rule called Regulation Show, known as Reg Show for short, a show as in we're just going to put on a show, we're not really going to do anything. No, it's supposed to be short. Show is short for short. Established a series of guidelines designed, in theory, to prevent traders from selling stocks and then failing to deliver it to the buyer. Intentionally failing to deliver stocks, then FEC Chief Christopher Cox noted, is market manipulation that clearly violate of federal securities laws. That should say that clearly violates. I don't know. I'm not correcting Matt Taibbi. He's way more smarter than me when it comes to typing things out for sure. But thanks to lobbying by hedge funds and brokers, the new rule included no financial penalties for violators and no real enforcement mechanism. Instead, it merely created a thing called the threshold list, requiring short sellers to close out their positions in any company where the amount of fails to deliver exceeds 10,000 shares for more than 13 days. In other words, if counterfeiters, meaning naked short selling, meaning they don't have any stock, they don't intend to get the stock, and they don't intend to deliver the stock if their short fails, if counterfeiters got caught selling a chunk of phantom shares in a firm for 2 straight weeks, they would no longer be allowed to counterfeit the stock. A nice, if timid idea, except that's completely meaningless. Not only has there been virtually no enforcement of the rule, but the SEC doesn't even bother to track who's targeting companies with failed trades. Now, Let me explain something to you here for a second. I didn't understand this till I read this article. What happened with Bear Stearns? What happened with, I don't know, all of these companies, all these shorts we've been seeing, the destruction of companies, with attempted destruction of companies like the Italian place and the lobster place. You know what I'm talking about. Those places that we've seen in the news lately is these companies are going out and they're selling 1 million shares. The stock's at $69. They start dumping 1 million shares in naked shorts on said company. The company goes from $69 to $49 to $29 because they're dumping all of this stuff. They're dumping all of this stuff. April 5th, Tard, not 1st. But go ahead. On all of the marketplace, causing the price to go down when they never intended to sell the stock. It was fake. It was counterfeit. It wasn't real. It was designed to destroy a company and steal what was left for pennies on the dollar. It's not just a hostile takeover, which is what Elon did with X. It was a hostile takeover. It's where he come along. It's what's happening right now with Universal Studios between Netflix and Paramount. Paramount is trying to buy Universal Studios via hostile takeover, meaning your stock's trading at $50, we'll give you $60. That's what they did with X, hostile takeover. That's not this. This is, we're not giving you anything. We're driving your stocks down. And the government's helping us, and the media is helping us. It's an organized deep state attack. The first documented case of this scam involved the small-time boiler room grifters in the late 90s, not long after Trimbath warned her boss about the problem. A trader named John Fierro executed a series of bear raids on small companies. First, he sold shares he didn't possess in huge quantities and fomented negative rumors about the company. Then, in a classic shakedown, he approached the firm with offers to desist. If they'd sell him the stock at a discount, he would press the button and enter the trade for 500,000 shares, says Brent Baker, SEC official who busted Fierro. He didn't have the stock to cover that, but the price of the stock would drop to a penny. In 2005, complaints from investors about naked short selling finally prompted SEC to try to curb the scam. A rule called Regulation Show, known as Reg Show for short, established a series of guidelines designed in theory to prevent traders from selling stocks and then failing to deliver to the buyer, intentionally failing to deliver stock. Then the SEC, Christopher Cox, noted its market manipulation as clearly okay, I've already read this. I think he repeated this in here. But thanks to the lobbying by hedge funds, blah, 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 the same thing that he said over again. So repeating in the article. I apologize. I caught it when I was reading through. It says here, except that it's completely meaningless. Not only has there been virtually no enforcement of the rule, but the SEC doesn't even bother to track who's targeting the companies with failed trades. As a result, many stocks attacked by naked short sellers spent years on the threshold list, including Krispy Kreme, Martha Stewart, and Overstock.com. We were actually on it for 668 days, consecutive days, says Patrick Bryan, the CEO of Overstock, who became much ridiculed pariah on Wall Street for his lobbying against naked short selling, because these big firms are making trillions of dollars doing this. At one point, investors claimed ownership of nearly 42 million shares of Overstock, even though fewer than 24 million shares in the company had actually been issued. So these investors with fake shorts had 42 million shares, but there's only 24 million shares ever issued. Where'd the rest come from? Sounds like they've been voting in Georgia. Brian is not an easy person for anyone with any kind of achievement neurosis to like. He's young, good looking, has shitloads of money, speaks fluent Chinese, holds a doctorate in philosophy, and spent his youth playing hooky from high school and getting business tips from the likes of Warren Buffett. But because of his fight against naked short selling, he has been turbo-fragged by mainstream media and as a tinfoil hat lunatic. One story in the New York Post featured a picture of Brian with a flying saucer coming out of his head. Nonetheless, Brian's Halloweens about naked short selling looked extremely present in the light of what's happened to Bear and Lehman. Over the past 4 years, Brian has outlined the parameters of naked shorting scam that always includes some combination of the following elements: negative rumors planted in the financial press. By the way, the government's the only one that can orchestrate this. The flooding of the market with enormous quantities of undelivered shares, absurdly high trading volumes, and prolonged appearance of targeted company on the registered SHO list. In January 2005, at the exact moment registered SHO was launched, Brian's own company was trading at $65 a share, and the number of failed trades in circulation was virtually nil. By 2006, however, overstock was down $28 a share, and Reg Show data indicated an explosion of failed trades, nearly 4 million underlying shares on some days. At those moments, in other words, nearly a 50th of all overstock shares were fake. This really isn't about my company, Brian says. I mean, I've made my money. My initial concern, of course, was overstock, but the more I learned about this, the more I really worried. I really worry because what they are the implications for the system. And given what happened to Bear and Lima last year, I think we ended up seeing what some of those implications are. Bear Stearns wasn't the kind of company that had a problem with naked short selling before March 11, 2008. There had never been a period in which significant quantities of Bear stocks had been sold and then not delivered. And the company had never shown up on the Reg short list, but beginning in March 20th, the day after the Fed meeting that failed to include Bear, a mysterious purchase of options betting on the firm's imminent collapse, the number of counterfeit shares in Bear skyrocketed. The best way to grasp what happened is to look at the data. On Tuesday, March 11th, this is in 27 or 28, 2007, 2008, there were 2,176 shares of Bear that had failed to deliver. The very next day, the phantom shares leaped to 1.2 million. By the close of trading on Friday, it passed 2 million. And when the market reopened the following Monday, it soared to 13.7 million, all fake, all counterfeit, in less than a week. And the number of counterfeit shares in Bear had jumped nearly 70-fold. The giant numbers of undelivered shares over the course of the week amounted to one of the most blatant cases of stock manipulation in Wall Street history. There's no doubt in my mind, not a single doubt, that the naked short selling helped destroy Bear, says Senator Ted Kaufman, a Democrat from Delaware, who introduced legislation to curb such financial fraud. Asked to rate how obvious a case of naked short selling Bear is on a scale of 1 to 10, the former SEC counsel Brent Banker doesn't hesitate. Easily a 10, he says. It goes on, but I wanted to get to that point because I wanted to just point out that the economy was about to collapse in 2007, just before Barack Hussein Obama took over. It was started by the collapse of Bear Stearns, and Lehman Brothers, which was kicked off by naked short selling as a complete fraud, which I believe is orchestrated by our own government so that George W. Bush could destroy capitalism in order to save it and then turn the reins over to Barack Hussein Obama. What came of that? Well, they nationalized the 3 car companies in the United States of America. They went through and took away dealerships from people from all over the country in the car industry. I can talk about the car industry because I was in it. From all of these private companies that sold for the big 3, they went and took their dealerships from them. Took it. Barack Hussein Obama, first he nationalized them, then he took the dealerships, and they're now pushing the dealerships to big conglomerates. Pretty much nationalizing the car industry. They nationalized the banking system. They had to destroy capitalism in order to save it. Don't forget that. That is an important saying. And we're going to find out, among a million other things that are about to bust loose in this country, we're going to find out that George W. Bush was working with Barack Hussein Obama to destroy capitalism in this country. And everything that happened since then was 100% intentional to our economy, everything else. The only thing that stood in the way was Donald Trump. Donald Trump messed up a bunch of their plans. And that really hurt them. I'm looking for a post that I don't seem to have anymore. Let's see here. Election meddling. We'll get to the election. I thought I had something else about, I guess I don't, about the Chinese money. Nope. Okay, we'll skip it. We'll skip it and move on to the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is, Epstein's been in the news. Let me go here. So, Epstein's in the news. We got lots to talk about with Epstein. Now, they just changed their headline. Let me just check to see if I'm right. Let's see. I'm looking. So the Drudge Report, I noticed something this morning. Breaking news about Epstein. And a guy over on, let me add the comments to the page because I forgot this. By the way, I'm broadcasting on all the channels today. Say hi to everybody. Somebody over on YouTube says this about Epstein. He's trying to say that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. Keep watching the show, brother, because there's people not talking about Epstein. But mind you, the Drudge Report up until last week was Epstein. It felt like the record was on it. It was skipping for all you old fogies that know what I mean. Donald Trump's in Epstein. Donald Trump's in Epstein. Donald Trump's in Beaver. Donald Trump's in Epstein. Donald Trump's in Epstein. Headlines across the Drudge Report for weeks. Today, the 26th of December, 2025. I give you. Keep watching their toes or whatever the heck your name is. I give you the headlines. Mar-a-Lago summit to save failing peace deals because we don't want peace. We want more people to die. U.S. strikes ISIS. African nation courts controversy by cooperating. Yeah. By the way, Donald Trump did launch military strikes against ISIS in Nigeria to save the Christians. God forbid. I thought it was just about the Jews. It is cringe to be extremely online now. TikToker hits podstration, whatever. Who cares? But you notice what's not discussed anywhere on the Drudge Report? Let's go way down here at the bottom. Is there anything down here? New study? Nope. No Epstein. Why aren't we talking? It was Epstein. I got the guy over on YouTube right now. He's in them. He's blocked it all out. Dude, you ain't heard the news, have you? Oh, nothing about Epstein. You would think after news that broke yesterday and Christmas Eve, Bubba has toes. You would think that they'd be talking about Epstein. I haven't looked. Is MSNBC talking about Epstein today? Or is it crickets? Because news has broken. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. That's right. There's broken news on Epstein. Oh, my goodness. But no one wants to talk about it. Where is Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene? Epstein. Where is it? Where are they? Why aren't they saying anything today? How come they haven't ran to the presses over the breaking news?
Then who?
Anybody tell me where the stuff is about Epstein? You're not putting out the Epstein stuff. It was a trap. I wish I had the meme set up. It's a trap. Donald Trump came out of nowhere and says, it's all baloney. It's all fake. He got the Democrats and the Republicans in a one time in the history. They can't come together and try to fix the economy. They can't come together and try to fix healthcare. They can't come together and pass a damn budget. But by God, 400 of them in the Senate or in the House, and most of them in the Senate, can vote to release the Epstein files that they knew were in the Southern District of New York. We got to replete those files. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They were all in on it. They're all in on it. But not a word. Nary a word. Nary a word. Here they are. Here they are before Christmas. Here they are, ladies and gentlemen, before Christmas. Donald Trump flew on Epstein's airplane. Oh, my God.
Another example, also among the latest batch of documents, is an email stating that Trump traveled numerous times on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet. The sender's name of the email has been redacted. However, the title is listed as Assistant U.S. Attorney, Southern District of New York. The email reads in part this: for your situational
of New York,
want to let you know that the flight records we received yesterday reflect that Donald Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously has been reported, or in a parenthetical, or that we were aware, including during the period we would expect to charge in a Maxwell case. In particular, he's listed as a passenger on at least 8 flights between 1993 and 1996, including at least 4 flights on which Maxwell was also present. He's listed as having traveled with, among others, and at various times, Marla Maples, his daughter Tiffany, and his son Eric. On one flight in 1993, he and Epstein are the...
By the way, notice how they just kind of let that lie. In 1993, how old were his kids? A couple of them are younger than me. I'm just saying. Just let that lie. This was all back in 1993, 92, 93, by the way. You know, when Bill Clinton had the Epsteins over to their house 1 million times, the White House. Oh, yeah. But we leave that part out of the equation.
2 listed passengers. On another, the only 3 passengers are Epstein, Trump, and then 20-year-old, and that 20-year-old's name has been redacted. The email continues, on 2 other flights, 2 of the passengers, respectively.
A 20-year-old is a consenting adult. Weird. But we redact that name.
Or women who would be possible witnesses in a Maxwell case.
Wait, two of the passengers on a flight that Trump and Epstein were on?
A flight that Trump and Epstein were on
Would be two possible witnesses in a Maxwell case?
in a Maxwell criminal case. The context here is this was emails from January 2020. So again, Trump Department of Justice, and per this email,
That's before Maxwell.
Out of the Southern District of New York in 2020, these emails talking about 1993 out of the Southern District of New York. Donald Trump says that those files were a scam. They were fake. It's not real. It's a trap. Not for Trump. No. Not for Trump. It's a trap, but not for Trump. There was a letter going around released from that same place, the Southern District of New York, that saying that Donald Trump shares a love of young, nimble girls. Well, that letter has been completely debunked. Now, let me show you the right-wing mega conspiracy theorist from the Young Turks, Sink Uyghur, however you say his name, the Epstein letter to Larry Nassar saying our president also shares our love of young, nimble girls is clearly fake. It was sent from the wrong place and processed 3 days after Epstein died. So the question is, who wanted to frame Trump to distract from the real culprits? I'm not saying Trump is completely innocent in any involvement with Epstein. I'm saying the letter is fake. Not only does it try to shift the focus to Trump, but it also has reference to how Epstein is going to kill himself. So who also wanted us to think it was a suicide? Now, look, I don't agree with this guy 99.9% of the time, but he's saying the letter's fake. It's obvious fake. It's been debunked by everybody. It was from the Southern District of New York. This is what Donald Trump was talking about. Most of the stuff out of the Southern, there's Bill Clinton, but he's not really doing anything. Most of the stuff out of the Southern District of New York that they've been releasing since Congress passed the bill, Thomas Massey throwing a fit on Christmas Eve. He hasn't released enough. We want more. You sucker. You sucker. Here's breaking news again. Same thing, saying the same thing. Trump's FBI Epstein prison postcard to pedophile Larry Nassar is fake. Fake. Didn't even come from the prison. It's fake. But the media is still reporting. I'm sure that guy over there on YouTube is sitting there going, darn it, that one didn't get him. I'm sure there's something in there, though. Yep. Oh, there's something. There's something happening here. And it's becoming very, very, very clear on what that is. You know, we got pictures like this of Epstein. We all know Epstein was a pervert and had issues. We all know that. Those were coming out. We all know he was a prevert.
In the meantime,
we don't know what he did, who he did it with. Well, we don't know who was everybody he did it with because they're hiding that. And it's not Donald Trump. Now, all y'all out there going, oh, Donald Trump. Oh, we got him now. The walls are closing in. Oh, here's the news. Are you watching there? What's your name, Toes Guy? What's your guy on YouTube? Are you still watching? Or did you flee because you're panicking, because you can't handle the truth? You can't handle the truth. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to you. Because the Southern District of New York had burned bags too. Breaking December 24th at 1:52 p.m. U.S. Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, that's the new one, because the old one, James Comey's daughter, was resigned. And the FBI have informed the Department of Justice that they've uncovered over 1 million, let me read that again for those of you who are too slow to understand. U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York and FBI have informed the Department of Justice that they've uncovered over 1 million more documents.
Gentlemen, it's come to my attention that a breakaway Russian is about to transfer a nuclear warhead to the United Nations in a few days. Here's the plan. We get the warhead and we hold the world ransom for $1 million.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The Southern District of New York uncover 1 million more documents potentially related to Jeffrey Epstein case. The DOJ has received these documents from the Southern District of New York and the FBI, reviewed them for release in compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which over 400 Republicans and Democrats in the House voted for, where most of the Senate voted for, and the president signed because he suckered you right into it. He suckered you right into it. He had you begging for these. We want the Epstein. We want the Epstein. Well, guess what? I think you're about to get the Epstein. The Epstein no one wanted you to know. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. In compliance with the Epstein File Transparency Act, existing statutes, the judicial orders, we have lawyers working around the clock to review and make legally required redactions to potential victims. We will release the documents as soon as possible due to the mass volumes of materials. This process may take a few more weeks. The department will continue to fully comply with the federal law and President Trump's direction to release the files. Release the files, they said. How many of you believe they didn't know that existed prior to Christmas Eve? How many of you believe that nobody knew there was 1 million more files in the Southern District of New York that no one knew about? How did Austin do it? Does he go like this? 1 million files. How many of you believe nobody knew about that? You want to know what I believe? I believe if you rewind all the way back to when was it? May, June, when Donald Trump said that the Epstein files are a hoax, that they'd already found the burn bag, strategically placed, so that Donald Trump could find it when he entered the White House again for such a time as this. And he went out and baited these suckers into begging. Hey, Thomas Massey, how's it feel to be played like a fiddle? They're all out there calling for it. And the prophesized boomerang event is about to happen. 1 million files. 1 million files. Just appeared. As my son, who's now 22, 23 years old, I don't know, 23 years old, used to say when he was a toddler, "Madge appeared." just Madge appeared out of nowhere. Woo! Look at there. Boom. All the Epstein stuff you thought you deleted. Yep. How about that? Just like that. And just like that. Nobody's talking about Epstein. The Drudge Report was Epstein. And today it's Epstein who? What are you talking about? Well, we don't know nothing about what Epstein. Who's Epstein? That's just we know nothing. Epstein. I don't know anything about that. Yeah, just like that. Nobody knows. I just find it, interesting. Don't you? Here is Jack Busek. Let me pull up the video here quick. Jack Busek was asked about this, about Epstein and all that. And I think he had some interesting to say on this Epstein document dump out of nowhere. that nobody knew was coming. Like Shazam! How'd that happen? I'm telling you, Donald Trump knew about this file right here. And you see, this is highly classified information that until the president unclassifies it, is classified. So he doesn't have to tell Congress about all this stuff. Their rules. He made them beg for it. He made them beg for it. Oh, yes. Give us the Epstein files. We know you're in it because we set it up. We're going to find out who's in it.
Without further ado, just 30,000 foot view for us. What's going on with Epstein? How did we get here? What have we learned?
Okay, so this is the response to that legislation that was passed by the House a while back. It was a bipartisan piece of legislation regarding the Epstein files, which some of us, like myself, have been calling for since day one of President Trump returning to the White House. And what we've got now are actual files coming out. Now, what we have today, there were files released during AmFest because, of course, it couldn't be a Turning Point event without Epstein files getting released separately. And then now we've got more Epstein files that are being released as part of this tranche. And I believe that one of the things that's going on right now is that a lot of these files that are coming out, these are investigative files. These are things that came up as evidence. And there are a lot of redactions in these, some of which we're told are redactions for victims on personal information that people don't want out for those who aren't being accused of a crime, or people who are, like I said, victims of Epstein and of his network, and potentially even underage, depending on who it is. Obviously, we can't tell in many of these cases, but there are so many more files that are coming out. And also that people are saying there have been back and forths of the DOJ. They said, wait a minute, you put some stuff out, then you put out other stuff and redacted. So there are people even, this is a very live situation where people are responding to the DOJ release legally and saying, hey, I want that redacted. Hey, I want that redacted. So that being said, what we do actually have, I'm just going to say it. These photos that are released are absolutely disgusting. They make me sick to my stomach looking at some of these. I talked about this on Newsmax last night, that when there have been a lot of people. So there's been this narrative that, like, okay, Epstein maybe wasn't involved in like really bad stuff and maybe it's all just overblown. No, it's actually disgusting. And there's a lot of photos. It just has to be said truthfully. There are a lot of photos of him with Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton in a hot tub, him and Bill Clinton on planes, him and Bill Clinton wearing, matching shirts of some kind at like some kind of party. So again, what you're not finding are images of Donald Trump in a hot tub. And so the Democrats are sitting there going like, wait, what's happening? Because we were told Trump would be the one in there. And yes, there were some instances where they said, okay, we found some records of Trump flying on the plane. But what was interesting is, of course, not only did they still not find Trump, and just be truthful, they did not find Trump flying to the island, but Trump was also flying on the plane with his family. So like with his wife and children. So again, like not a situation where we're hopefully anything untoward.
Those were mostly in the 90s, right, Jack? So
this is way, like we're talking 30, 40 years ago in some instances. So where it's like just, or 30 years ago. So instances where long before any of his crimes had come to life, long before, I mean, you know, the rest of the story, we've been over it so many times, where he was evicted from Mar-a-Lago for his behavior. And then Trump actually goes to the lawyers of the victims to say, how can I help you to put this guy away? Because he's a bad guy. And what we're seeing again over and over are pictures of Epstein, as well as some emails with former Prince Andrew. A fake passport is something that just came out, which is something that's really interesting. I mean, this is happening all live. It was an Austrian passport. Talked about businesses in West Africa and Saudi Arabia. I mean, really just a lot of random things that are coming out like crazy right now.
Let's go ahead and get President Trump was asked about this. Let's play 191.
I know there are a lot of people that are angry about all of the pictures of other people, but I think it's terrible. Look, no, I don't like the pictures of Bill Clinton being shown. I don't like the pictures of other people being shown. I think it's a terrible thing. I think Bill Clinton's a big boy. He can handle it. But you probably have pictures being exposed of other people that innocently met Jeffrey Epstein years ago, many years ago. And they're, highly respected bankers and lawyers and others. And they'll end up, because of guys like Massey, who's a real lowlife. What this whole thing is with Epstein is a way of trying to deflect from the tremendous success that the Republican Party has.
This feels pretty consistent with Trump's original kind of objection to this, and we have to remember that if they had something on Trump, it would have been weaponized by the Biden administration, 10 times over. So
to turn that around, if they have something on Clinton, I feel like the Trump admin would probably want to, he has a pretty big beef with the Clintons. Couldn't we turn that around as well?
Actually, Trump is saying, listen, I've always gotten along with Bill. He's been good to me. I've been good to him. I actually don't, kind of getting inside the psyche of President Trump, I actually don't think he has like a bone to pick with Bill Clinton per se, maybe Hillary more so. But I think Trump knows a lot of these guys, kind of knows the situation that some of the innocent ones are put in. It just feels like he's being consistent. But the admin was pressured. He takes a shot at Thomas Massey right there to be more transparent. So he's doing what he's got to do politically. But I think he actually seems to be fairly disgusted with the fact that innocent people are going to get dragged here.
Right before we end the segment, one thing I should mention is there is a very strange letter to Larry Nassar. Larry Nassar, who we know also went to prison and is in prison for these same type of crimes, that Epstein wrote a letter to him saying, as you know by now, I have taken the short route home. Good luck. We shared one thing, our love and caring for young ladies and the hope they'd reach their full potential. And then he makes a lewd reference to Trump. And then he writes, life is unfair.
Yeah, very, very fascinating. More with Jack Posobiec, Human Events Daily.
Life is unfair, but God is just. And I wouldn't want to stand before him with holding my millstone. Just saying. And Tard, of course, it's the Jews, right? Who pays for the Mossad? That's all I got to say. Who controls who? The one who receives the money or the one who sends the money? Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, there is that. Oh, but there's so much more today. That's why it's probably be a longer show. There's just so much more happening. We are on the verge, ladies and gentlemen, of God taking his hands off. As Mike said earlier about the dam, we're on the verge of God taking his hands off. Things are about to get really problematic for some people. Donald Trump, he truthed this out. Merry Christmas to all, including the many sleazebags who loved Jeffrey Epstein, gave him bundles of money, went to his island, attended his parties, and thought he was the greatest guy on earth, only to drop him like a dog when things got too hot, falsely claiming they had nothing to do with him. Didn't know him. Said he was a disgusting person, and then blamed, of course, President Donald J. Trump, who was actually the only one who did drop Epstein, and long before it became fashionable to do so. When their names got brought out in the ongoing radical left witch hunt, plus one low-life Republican Massey, you forgot Marjorie Taylor Greene there, Trump. And it's revealed that are Democrats all, there will be a lot of explaining to do. Much like there was when it was made public that the Russia hoax was a fictitious story, a total scam, and had nothing to do with Trump. The failing New York Times, along with many others, were forced to apologize for their bad and faulty election reporting, even to the point of losing many subscribers due to their highly inaccurate fake coverage. Now the same losers are at it again, only this time so many of their friends, mostly innocent, will be badly hurt and reputationally tarnished. But sadly, That's the way it is in the world of corrupt Democrat policies. Enjoy what may be your last Christmas, President Donald J. Trump. What? Yeah, enjoy your last Christmas. He's talking to the sleazebags who love Jeffrey Epstein and telling them to enjoy their last Christmas. Well, that comment's a little pregnant, don't you think? What may be last Christmas? And he's not talking about the song from Wham or whoever that we all hate, and I'm not going to sing. You all know the song. Anyways, yeah, there it is right there, ladies and gentlemen. Marine says self-deportation. It'll be Muslim. You know, you are you Tard. You live up to your name, man. Oh, yeah, they want a bad Christmas, but that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. In fact, this time next year, we'll be talking something totally different. Totally different. Brian Cates says this. Holy crap. Wow. Amazing. There were 1 million new Epstein documents just sitting right there waiting for someone to trip over them and find them on Christmas Eve. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying. When Donald Trump came out and said it is all a hoax, he already had possession of these files. They just waited. Until Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas, everybody. He just waited to Christmas Eve to give a great Christmas present to all of these scumbags out there with the ones that really were over there. The ones that were really over there doing all the scumbag stuff. He just waited for Christmas Eve to dump all this stuff on them, and now no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to talk about it.
Christmas! Merry Christmas, George! Merry Christmas, George! Merry Christmas, movie house! Merry Christmas, Emporium! Merry Christmas, you wonderful building and loan!
It's a wonderful life. Isn't it great? Don't you remember that Bondi said there was multiple truckloads of documents? I know, right? This big all long thing that's been happening since May with all this Epstein stuff, and they all just fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And now they're going to get what they asked for. They're going to get what they asked for, and they're going to get it shoved right down their throats. And they're not going to want to hear it, but they're going to hear it, whether they like it or not. They're going to hear it because it's coming. Donald Gibson, this is Pepe Deluxe over on Telegram and X. Congress is waiting Trump out, especially the Republicans. They hate MAGA just like they hated the Tea Party. Yep. They're going to try to do 2018 all over again. But they got another thing coming. And if you're watching me over on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, I saw the comment, a long time no see. I broadcast every single day. Link is in the description section on Facebook and on YouTube for Rumble. Go over to Rumble or X, and I broadcast every single day, Monday through Friday, 8:30 Central Standard Time, every day. The show has continued. Facebook sucks. YouTube sucks, but on Fridays, I go to all the places so that maybe I can catch you. appreciate you being out there and let you know to hit the link, come over to Rumble, where freedom of speech exists, where freedom of discussion and freedom of thought exists. And but where they monetize me too. But that's a whole nother story. Facebook keeps telling me, we can't monetize you. Give me a break. Give me a break. Go away. Who cares? So what else is going on? What other things are they not talking about on the Drudge Report or MSNBC? Now that they've shut up about Epstein. It was all Epstein all the time, especially between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Yeah. What have they not talked about? Well, here's James Comer of the Oversight Committee talking about our good friend Tim Walz and all of the corruption that's going on over there in Minneapolis.
And who do we need to hold accountable? And hopefully we'll have some criminal referrals at the end of the investigation.
What is so fascinating about this, Chairman Comer, is how no one knew. Or did they know? This is an op-ed from the Wall Street Journal here, asking, I think, a pretty fair question. When nearly $250 million can vanish from one state program before anyone truly notices, taxpayers are justified in asking, who was supposed to be minding the store? The uncomfortable answer is that no one elected by the people held that responsibility or held the mandate and clout to stop the scheme. You know, your whip, Tom Emmer, says there's no way that Governor Tim Walz didn't know, or somebody in his administration didn't have an inkling that there was something going on. Do you agree with that? And how do you prove that?
I agree completely. Look, Tom Emmer was a state legislator in Minnesota before he came here. He has the pulse of Minnesota. He communicates regularly with Minnesota state legislators and Minnesota state employees. They've been talking about this for years. There was a congressman that came in from Minnesota when I came in 9 years ago to Congress named Jason Lewis. He was talking about the massive fraud from the Somali population 9 years ago. So this is something that's been talked about in Minnesota for a long time. The Minnesota media is very liberal, so they're never going to write anything bad about a beloved Democrat like Tim Walz or Keith Ellison. So finally, the state employees have stepped forward publicly and talked about this massive amount of fraud. And I can tell you from our preliminary discussions with these state employees, it is a significant amount of money. And remember, Minnesota isn't a big state. So when you're talking about billions of dollars for a small state, that is a significant percentage of the budget for welfare in that state.
Should the governor resign? Are you calling on him to resign?
Well, not yet. He deserves due process, and we're going to give him due process. One of the things he said in the last 48 hours was that the Oversight Committee didn't need to worry about this investigation, that he would take care of it. I mean, no one in America believes that. That is a joke. We are going to investigate this. The key to a good congressional investigation is having whistleblowers. And fortunately for us, we have some state employees who have bravely stepped forward. We're going to get them under oath, and they're going to tell us everything they know, and we're going to go from there. Wherever the investigation leads us, we will go. We're going to try to do it as rapidly as possible. But I think at the end of the day, the American taxpayers, and especially the taxpayers in Minnesota, are going to be sick at their stomach, and Tim Walz is going to have a lot of explaining to do.
Okay. Chairman Comer, thanks for joining us on this holiday week. We hope you have a very...
So now we know the Epstein people got some splaining to do. And now Tim Walz in Minnesota and Ilhan Omar and the rest have some splaining to do. There's going to be a lot of splaining going on in the next 11 months. I'm telling you what, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and it's going to get worse by the minute. Here's some more. This is going on. This is Georgia Senator reacts to the 2020 Fulton case that we all talked about last week.
All right, a couple quick thoughts on the Fulton County rule violation in the 2020 election that was just finally adjudicated before the state election board. First and foremost, this is exactly why Burt Jones, Brandon Beach, and myself called for a special session at the Georgia General Assembly back in 2020. We were chastised by Jeff Duncan and a bunch of our party leadership, but the reality is this should have been investigated in 2020 before the election was certified, not in 2025. That brings me to my second point. Why in the world is the state of Georgia having to rely on private citizens playing private investigator on their own time to uncover these irregularities? Fulton County was under observation by the Secretary of State's office in 2020. This should have been caught by them. This should have been investigated by them, and it should have been done immediately. And that brings me to my third and final point. It's always Fulton County.
always Fulton County. Just like in Missouri, it's always Kansas City and St. Louis. Oh, by the way, silver's trading at $76. Will it get to $80 for the end of the year? Now there was people calling in July-ish area for $75 silver by the end of the year. Well, by golly, we'd done that. And they were calling for $5,000 gold by the end of the year. It's trading at $45.79. Excuse me, $45.78. $45.79. $45.78. Yeah, we'll see. Can it get there? We still got, 5 days left? 6 days? 6 days left? I don't know how many trading days. It could happen. We'll see what happens. Yep. So there's lots happening. There's lots happening right now, and it's on every front. It's everywhere, and it's crazy. It's crazy, and I really mean this. It's insane what's happening. Here is let me see. I gotta get the right one here. Here's Donald Trump talking about troops in Chicago. The Supreme Court has just made a ruling. We're going to get into that.
What? The Insurrection Act, under what conditions or terms would you?
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far, it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that. I mean, I want to make sure that people aren't killed. We have to make sure that our cities are safe.
We have to make sure our cities are safe. I'd do the Insurrection Act if people were being killed, and something about the courts holding it up. Oh, my goodness. The Supreme Court ruled just before Christmas that Donald Trump cannot use the National Guard. Cannot use the National Guard to go in and secure Chicago. They ruled it. That means it applies everywhere. Donald Trump can't use the National Guard everywhere. Now, Justice Kavanaugh stated in the minority, says the Comitatus Act, instead, he relies on inherent constitutional authority that, according to the government, allows him to use military to protect federal personnel and property. But the government also claims, consistent with the longstanding view of the executive branch, that performing such protective function does not constitute executing the laws with the meaning of the Posse Comitatus Act. Later, reply brief, blah, 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 blah. If this is correct, it's hard to see how performing those functions and could constitute executing the laws under this act. This court does not lightly assume that Congress silently attaches different meanings to the same term in the same or related statutes. Thus, at least in this posture, the government has not carried out its burden to show that this permits the president to federalize the Guard in the exercise of inherent authority to protect federal personnel and property in Illinois. We need not and do not address the revealability of findings made by the president under the section right here or any other statute. The applied authority is denied. So that's Kavanaugh putting that. So that wasn't the minority. He was in agreement. This preliminary stage, the government has failed to identify the source of authority that would allow the military to exceed the laws of Illinois. The president has not invoked a statute that provides an execution to the exemption to the Posse Comitatus Act. Anyways, instead relies on his inherent constitution. It says down here, it says it's rereading what I just read there, but then they circle this down to bottom. It says apparent ramifications of the court opinion is that it could cause the president to use U.S. military more than National Guard to protect federal personnel and property in the United States. Looks like Facebook just took me down or something. If you're watching, the Patriot Mike Show was just dumped on Facebook. So that's nice. That's nice. On my on the Patriot Mike Show channel. Oh well. Don't care. That's why I only do it on Friday. Waiting on signal on Facebook. Huh. Well, if you're waiting on signal on Facebook where you're not, somebody tell them to go to Rumble because Facebook is down. It just dumped me. So, anyways, probably because I'm talking about this, evidently. All right. There's more on this subject coming up with the military. Half the military joined up to get green cards. Did you ever serve in the military, sir? Tarred and feathered? I don't know if you're a sir. I don't know. So there's more on this coming. And I want to get to the fiddle around and finding out parts because it's important. Now, down there in Georgia, we found out some election fraud going on, and Rudy Giuliani says this about it.
In the meantime, Mayor, so what was your reaction when you first heard that, over 315,000 votes in Fulton County lacked the required poll worker signature necessary?
Well, 315,000 votes were pulled out of Fulton County because they were illegal, as they should have been. Trump would have won the election by about 40,000 votes, maybe 50,000 votes. So I really do expect now that the people that attack me over Georgia will come and kiss my feet. Nothing less is acceptable. I told you that was screwed up, and I am right. It was screwed up. I told you that he won that state. And when the president said to the slimy Secretary of State, you can't find me 11,000 votes, he's talking about a potential couple of 100,000 here. Remember, the votes in Fulton County were like 3-1 for him. So if you just take those votes out, right, you deprive him of about 145,000 votes, I think. Right. And then he loses by 135,000. And Trump wins Georgia. Now, you still have to win another state, but it isn't like there weren't the same problems elsewhere, which they very arrogantly dismiss as saying, even the Wall Street Journal and the Post arrogantly dismiss it as saying, the president deceitfully said that the election was rigged, wrongfully suggested that the election was rigged. They got to get that wrongfully out of there. That's an opinion, boys, not a reality. The reality is that you can now say with a certitude, even beyond a reasonable doubt, that Georgia voted for Trump.
Yep. 100%. Georgia voted for Trump. And Rudy Giuliani says, come kiss my feet. You got to love it. You got to love it. It wasn't my Facebook. It wasn't the Patriot Mike Show Facebook. It was my personal Facebook page, but that's okay. That's okay. I think I got it up again. So they dumped me, but I put it back up. And it hasn't dumped me yet. We'll find out in a minute. I'm sure it was just a technical glitch, of course. That's all it could be, is a technical glitch. They would never do anything like that on purpose, right? Here's what's coming out. This is what's coming out of Georgia. The thing is, we've known all of this. This was all discussed in 2020 and 2021.
I estimated that somewhere between 80 and 90% were going to Joe Biden. Throughout the day, it kept making me sicker and sicker every time I saw another Biden. And then I'm going through batches. 100% of the batches were Biden. I find that statistically impossible. Just
100% of the batches going to Biden, 80 to 90% of the votes going to Biden. And this lady, who is probably a statistician, probably a researcher, a smart person, says that it doesn't happen. Things like that don't happen. And then we're back to Minnesota and the fraud that's going on in Minnesota. Talking about Ilhan Omar.
A lot of Democrats. And I think we need to get to the bottom of the issues with Ilhan Omar. I think she engaged in immigration fraud. I think she's covering up Medicaid fraud. And we've got to ask ourselves, why do we want a community in this country where 80% of the people who've been here for decades are on welfare and they're stealing billions of dollars? I want Ilhan Omar to lead the transit back home of all of these people.
That's right. I think Ilhan Omar will get a one-way trip back to Somaliland, which she loves so very, very, very much. Her heart has always been in Somalia and with the Somalia people and the Somalian government. I didn't know they had one, but okay. But okay, whatever works. Here's Tim Walz. Just upset with everything that's coming out. They need to ship him to China. Oh, I thought I hit play, but I didn't.
So this is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy. When you hear the Vice President of the United States talk about now white people won't have to apologize for being white. That's never happened once in my whole damn life. And I think everybody in this room knows what they're doing. So we're here today to say enough of this. We're here today to stand that Minnesota will protect their neighbors.
Well, I'm not apologizing for being white, and you shouldn't apologize for your skin color either, because the only people that see skin color and concerned about skin color are a bunch of racist bastards. Like Tim Walz. That's what needs to happen. Somalian are modern day pirates. Absolutely. It's the only industry they have out there. Don't you remember the Tom Hanks movie? I'm the captain now. Remember that? Yeah. Here he is on Christmas Day, wishing everybody a Merry Christmas.
Hey, everybody. Governor Walz here. Just finished a beautiful Christmas Eve morning long run in beautiful Minnesota. Almost 30 degrees, so just really great. But want to take a moment, wish you and your families a very Merry Christmas during this holiday season, to find some time away from the chaos and a reinforcement of what's really important: neighborliness, kindness, compassion, decency, and a welcoming attitude. So during this Christmas season, Merry Christmas to you, and from all Minnesotans, may you find some peace in the coming year.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I hope Minnesotans find peace in the coming year, and maybe a piece of the $200 billion or however much it is, or finally ends up being, that they stole from you. How's it feel to be raped by your government, metaphorically speaking? Here's Scott Jennings on Nancy Pelosi and her upcoming retirement.
She made them really angry, but at the end of the day, there was often grudging respect for some of the things skills that she brought to the table.
Oh yeah. There were people who respected her legislative ability and, being a political boss. I mean, she was the boss of her Congress.
Nancy D'Alessandro.
And there is, for political operators, a lot of respect for that. I'll tell you this, I don't know how much we raised over the years off of sending out fundraising appeals based on Nancy Pelosi, but it was a metric butt ton. I'm telling you right now, putting Nancy Pelosi in fundraising mail or fundraising emails would always produce. And by the way, it's not often that someone can become a titan of both Washington and Wall Street. Republicans will remember her as one of the most successful and prolific day traders. She beat the S&P 500 by 559% in her stock portfolio. She's worth a lot of money. She did an amazing job. So what a blow for the financial houses today on Wall Street. I'm sure they're mourning.
Just getting in an elbow, right?
Yeah, really trying to get in some opposition research.
That's a classic Scott Jennings, by the way. Like, I'm beginning to view what you just did there as like the Scott Jennings on TV.
I want Trump to put her in charge of the Social Security Administration. We could all retire in 6 months if we let this lady manage our portfolios.
Do you know what I think is, for me was, I
They're all like, oh, that's just Scott Jennings being Scott Jennings. No, that's Nancy Pelosi being Nancy Pelosi. And right now there's bills before Congress to try to ban it, and the Democrats have stood against it 100%. For all you people, this one's for you, that cannot understand, it goes over your head. You're too busy wrapped up in your conspiracy theories, and the Jews did it, to understand the H-1B visa and what Donald Trump's done with it. Maybe this will help. I doubt it, but maybe this will help.
No more will these big tech companies or other big companies train foreign workers. They have to pay the government $100,000, then they have to pay the employee. So it's just not economic. If you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land. Train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs. That's the policy here. $100,000 a year for H-1B visas, and all of the big companies are on board. We've spoken to them about the gold card.
They love it. They love it. They really love it. They need it. Go ahead, Sean.
Mr. President, it seems like there's two categories of visa programs. H-1B.
So here's the thing. First, he made the gold card, which cost $1 billion. I was getting $1 million. And that is, if you got a high-end individual that wants to migrate to the United States, say you got a billionaire over in Great Britain, he's a white guy, maybe even a Jew, and they're treating him miserably, taxing the hell out of him and blaming him for everything, and he decides, screw Britain, I want to come to America. He could buy himself a visa for $1 million. That's a good thing. Bring his assets over here. Bring his business and entrepreneurial mind over here. That's a net gain. And tarred and feather can't get off the H-1B visa. Oh my God, it's H-1B. We need to ban the H-1B. He just banned the H-1B visa. You don't understand what he did. It now costs $100,000 a year if you want to use an H-1B visa to bring over talent from overseas and hire them in your company. So no more are you going to get the welcome to my 7-Eleven H-1B visas. No, you're not. You're going to get high finance and architecture and doctors and attorneys and people that can, produce $100,000 a year plus. That's what you're going to get. Well, Aaron, it's 53 degrees right now and a little foggy outside. He says there's a blizzard in Toronto. You can keep your blizzard. Keep it. I don't want it. So the H-1B visa has been restored to its original purpose, which was to bring over the talent. We want the talent. We don't want the scumbags like Somalians. We can send them all back. Speaking of, here's how the fraud works in Minnesota.
Here in Minnesota, massive fraud is taking place within the government and the Somali population. Here, this building alone, Quality Learning Center, is a daycare, yet they spelled learning wrong, and they said leering. This daycare alone in 2025 has received $1.9 million from the government. And the strange things about these childcare centers is there's no one here right now. It's midday on a weekday. If you were to try to go inside, it's completely closed and the windows are all blacked out. No one's working. Midday, children should be in here, and this place is licensed for 99 children, and this is the outside. There's no windows, no nothing. And like I said, they literally spelled the word wrong on their sign. This is open and blatant fraud taking place here inside of Minnesota. The government is complicit with this, and this is just one of the hundreds of child daycare centers here inside of Minneapolis being ran by the Somali population. It's sad that it's happening here in Minnesota, and it stinks that it's happening and it's being labeled on the Somali population. However, that's just the facts of what's happening here inside of Minnesota. $1.9 million for this daycare center that can't even spell learning right.
Yeah, because it's never intended to have any kids. It was intended to just suck money up. That's all it was about. All it was about was just to suck the money up. That's it. That's all it was for. And it's doing a good job. It's doing a good job. Donald Trump Jr. says this. He says, truth bomb. Trump was indicted for pressuring Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, a traitor to this country, to investigate election integrity in his state. 5 years later, Georgia admit they illegally certified in one county, what about the rest of the counties, 315,000 ballots in the 2020 election, handing Biden a win by 11,779 votes. Donald Trump Jr. says this conspiracy theory took 5 years, not the usual 5 months or even 5 minutes, to be proven true. But alas, here we are. Yeah.
This is not Abernathy.
Let's see. Oh, and the fraud continues because of fraud. There's fraud in California. Fraud just continues to keep going. Here's Newsmax reporting.
California Congressman Kevin Kiley, he is sounding the alarm in his home state, saying under Governor Gavin Newsom's leadership, it has become the, quote, fraud capital of America.
And we have team coverage. Our national correspondent, Alana Austin, is on Capitol Hill with more on the investigations into Tim Walz. But we start with correspondent Heather Myers, who has more on what is going on in California. A rainy day out there on the West Coast. Heather, what can you tell us?
Well, good afternoon to you, Katrina and Andrew. This latest report was issued by the state auditor, and that's a nonpartisan position. That state auditor now puts 8 state agencies on the high-risk list of agencies to watch out for things like fraud and mismanagement as well as waste. Here's a look at that 92-page report. Newly added to the high-risk list is California's food stamp program. If the state doesn't get the improper payments under control, it could cost an extra $2.5 billion. Also on there is the Department of Finance, which was tasked with giving out COVID relief funds. Critics say $32 billion of that was taken by fraudsters. Then there are infrastructure issues like California's deteriorating dams and also the high-speed train that's already cost taxpayers $18 billion without a single section of track complete. Other reports cite $24 billion spent on the homeless issue that critics claim the state lost track of. More recently, there's a report that says California cell phone users paid a surcharge for years to upgrade the state's 911 system. Here's Congressman Kevin Kiley talking about what happened to that plan.
That after spending $650 million on that system, the state is totally scrapping it and starting over, completely wasted the money because the technology doesn't work. Mind you, we are very close to Silicon Valley in Sacramento, and yet the government can't figure out how to make basic technology perform.
Yeah, so that's working out. How's it working out for y'all folks in California? Getting a little rain today? Yeah, gotta love it. You got to love it. Here's Zoltron. He's got a plan there in New York to take care of everybody, and I mean take care of them. Free. Nothing's ever free. Ain't that right, California?
Holidays are about being with family. For some, it's a welcome break from work or school. Yet for many, the struggle to afford childcare continues all the same. Here's the reality for a family in New York. Affording childcare requires you to make more than $330,000 a year, and that's just for a single toddler. After rent, it's the biggest cost burden on working families with kids, and these are some of the only options they have. Option 1, a parent leaves their job. In 2022, we lost $23 billion in economic activity because parents quit or had to cut hours to take care of their kids. Option 2, families leave New York entirely. Households with young children are twice as likely to move. Option 3, families go into debt because they have no choice but to pay these prices. Prices which force them to make impossible trade-offs. This is the affordability crisis in action. That's why universal childcare is a priority for me when I take office. The good news is there's a consensus. We need to act. The goal is universal, no-cost childcare for every family in New York City. We can expand 3K and pre-K to the youngest children, but it only works if we build it right. Over the next few months, we'll be speaking with families and childcare workers about what this needs to look like. Because with universal childcare, more families can afford to stay. More babies are born in New York City, more kids raised as New Yorkers. We stop losing the next generation and start building the city they deserve. That's the New York we're fighting for. Happy holidays. More to come in the new year.
So we got to pay for the childcare for all the people. Let me give you an alternative. So my youngest son, who works for FedEx now, works long hours but makes decent money, and his wife and their kid have decided that his wife will stay home and take care of the baby, and he will go to work, and they'll live more modestly. They drive a paid-for car. They only have one between the, as my friend would say, betwixt the two of them. So that's half the insurance, half the gas, half of everything. They live in a trailer house in a trailer park, which is way cheaper than living in trying to pay rent other places. And they decided that's the way they're going to live their life so that mama could stay home with the baby. Another example, my daughter, my middle daughter, who makes a very good income working for a production facility in Kansas City. Her husband stays home and takes care of the 5 kiddos, makes them get to school, all this stuff, and does odd jobs like auto repair from the house with my help. He's actually turned into a pretty good wrench. He'll call me on the phone. What do you think about this? At 30 years of the car business, I know a little bit. He doesn't do major stuff, brakes and that kind of stuff, and it makes a little extra income for them. But he's there to take care of the kids while my daughter goes to work. My oldest son, who's about to retire from the Air Force, have decided that mama's going to stay home and homeschool the kids and raise the kids while he goes to work. She's recently taken up a data entry job working from home, but she's still home with the kids. So all 3 of the kids I'm referring to here have made decisions where instead of having the government pay for their daycare so the mom could go to work so they could pay twice the taxes, is to adjust their lifestyle so that mama could stay home and raise the kids. So maybe we could try that. Well, we can't do it in New York. Maybe he was right. You should move, but not to Missouri. If you're just thinking about moving to Missouri, East St. Louis is the town you want to move to. I'm just saying, you'll enjoy it much better. You'll feel right at home. The gunshots, the muggings, the robberies, the unsafe neighborhoods, and all that stuff. You'll feel much better at home. Here is J.D. Vance responding about immigrants. And the question from Margaret is, this is a country founded by immigrants. And here's J.D. Vance's response to that. Yeah, we're going to go a little bit longer today.
Oh, well, this is a country founded by immigrants.
Well, this is a country founded by
country.
This is a very unique country, and it was founded by some immigrants and some settlers. But just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean that 240 years later that we have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're founded by immigrants, sort of. Even the Chiefs are moving there, talking about Kansas. I haven't responded to that yet. I was under the impression that it wasn't going to happen. I talked to some politicians in Missouri. Missouri made a very generous offer, but a bunch of Republicans. Oh my God, they're not going to pay their taxes. Government solution is the biggest. I said to a guy who's running for office, by the way, on this subject, I said, so you're a Marxist, huh? Well, I just don't think corporations should get out of paying taxes. Well, I think everybody should get out of paying taxes. But Kansas City Chiefs made a decision to move. And it's a big habloo. Oh my God, they're moving. I'm way more upset that they're abandoning Arrowhead Stadium to build a dome. I think it should be against the law for NFL to play in domes. I don't think football should be played in domes. It's dumb. I don't like it. But then again, not my decision. Who cares? But let me tell you something. The Kansas City Chiefs are moving 20 miles. still in the Kansas City Metroplex, as they say. You know, didn't Dallas move about 25 miles when they built their new stadium from the ghetto to a nicer neighborhood? Let me tell you, the Kansas City Chiefs Stadium is in Raytown. Have you ever been there? It is nothing but urban blight all around it. And it's probably not going to get better. They're moving to the Overland Park area. That's where all the rich people live. That's like the upper scale of the upper scale neighborhood. So Rams moved a bit further. Oh, yeah, exactly. That's my point. If Kansas City was in the middle of Missouri, that most people don't even know that don't live here, that Kansas City is in Missouri, not Kansas, it wouldn't be an issue. Nobody would care. And I don't care. I mean, Raiders moved away too. Well, Raiders have to move all the time. That's just part of their thing. I just hate domes. I just despise the NFL. That's my whole. They're gonna get a new dome. I think that Arrowhead Stadium is one of the most unique, awesome stadiums to have a football game in. If you've ever been to Arrowhead Stadium during a football game, especially against like the Raiders or San Diego or even against Denver yesterday, I bet it was wild. By the way, the Chiefs only lost that game by a touchdown in the last minute or two, which with their third string everybody was amazing in my opinion. I thought they were going to get slaughtered. So Denver Bronco fans, are you worried? Anyways, enough about that. Let's get back to the other stuff. But since you all brought it up, I've been meaning to comment about that on Facebook. I just haven't done it yet because it hasn't been that much of a priority in my life. Donald Trump shared this over on Truth Social.
I just thought it was strange that only Biden's name was selected, no down ballot. And I watched multiples. I don't know how many I watched, and not one of them was for Trump. I thought that was really strange, especially being military. You must know in your heart that this election was fraudulent. There's no question of it if you really are sensible. And
so only that's I remember that coming out, that there was a bunch of ballots and nobody voted for anything else but Joe Biden. Weird. People are agreeing with me that Overland Park is a really nice neighborhood. It is really nice and expensive, Overland Park, and that Raytown's a crap hole. Raytown is it's bad. It really, I mean, that's the hood. If you want to go to the hood, about the only place more the hood than Raytown is down there around Truce. And Passaic, was it Passaic? Passaic? Somebody tell me it lives up that way. You know, it's bad. It's bad. It's bad. Now back to the court decision that about National Guard. This is a big deal. This goes along with some of the prophecies that Mike has said personally. Others have said too. But listen. This is Alito.
Whatever one may think about the current administration's enforcement of the immigration laws or the way ICE has conducted its operations, the protection of federal officers from potentially lethal attacks should not be thwarted.
Yeah. What else? I mean, let me tell you something. What the Supreme Court did is they ruled, and in their ruling, they point out that if the Donald Trump can't use the National Guard, he can use the regular Army and the Marines. Oh, we'll get to that in a minute. I got more on that. But first, Kamala Harris. Aren't we glad she didn't win?
For anyone who is single, who wants to be in a relationship, is to be kind to yourself and choose to be with someone who is kind. I mean, and there are different phases in your life, and depending on what phase you're in, maybe you're going to choose that you want to have that kind of Friday night relationship, or you want that Sunday morning relationship.
Sometimes they go together and sometimes they don't.
Sometimes you can get both, and sometimes they just is oil and water.
Yes.
Right? And that's okay. You know, you be in those phases where you are having fun.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Kamala Harris is talking about Saturday night relationships as opposed to Sunday morning relationships because she's an expert. And if you know, I used to tell my kids, and used to tell my kids, I used to say, if you want to know how to get married, go talk to your mom, who at that time was married 7 or 8 times, and now it's more times than that. Talk to your mom, my first wife. Talk to your mom, because she'll tell you how to get married. She can't tell you how to stay married, but she can tell you how to get married. On the other hand, if you want to know how to, there was a when my older kids were little, there was a grandma in the church. Her name was Pearl, and she'd been married. Her and her husband had been married 70 years when her husband passed away, or right close to 70 years. She could tell you how to stay married. Not just get married. But Camel Toe, as you guys are saying in the comment section, can tell you how to get married, but not stay married. She doesn't have any idea. Here's the ramifications of the just prior to Christmas decision by the Supreme Court. It elevates other decisions. Get ready for this one.
Initially recently said, look, I'm trying to enforce the laws with ICE agents, with federal law enforcement, and I can't do it, so I need to call the National Guard. But the statute says the president has to be unable to enforce the law with regular forces. What does regular forces mean? We don't know. The Supreme Court has never decided that question before yesterday. The Supreme Court now says regular forces means you have to try with the regular armed forces first before you can bring out the National Guard. So the unintended consequence here might be that the president is going to have to call the 82nd Airborne or the Marines or the 101st Airborne Division, as, for example, President Eisenhower did after Brown versus Board of Education in the South to enforce desegregation. President Trump might have to do that first in order to protect those federal buildings, those ICE agents. And then if they fail, he can then call out the National Guard.
Got it. J.B. Pritzker, the governor in the state of Illinois, is saying this. Today is a big win for Illinois and American democracy. This is an important step in curbing the Trump administration's consistent abuse of power and slowing Trump's march toward authoritarianism. That's purely political. I think the president has obviously tried to work within the framework of the law as his legal eagles have seen it. 15 seconds or so. What happens from here? And I guess I answered my own question when I say I'm not surprised by Pritzker's response, and I guess you aren't either.
I'm not. He's, of course, injecting a lot of heated political rhetoric into this. Yeah. But what's going to happen? Trump will, of course, now have the right to go to the Supreme Court on the full merits. As you said, Kevin, this is just preliminary. He may be able to get the full court to reverse this preliminary decision. But second, and I think more worrisome, is the Supreme Court is essentially inviting President Trump to send regular armed troops and deploy those to Chicago and Los Angeles before he can send the National Guard. I think a governor would rather have National Guard troops than the 82nd Airborne and the Marine Corps patrolling the streets of Chicago.
Yeah, especially when you think of...
Oh, my goodness. So Supreme Court inadvertently, he says, may have caused the Marine Corps to be that which Trump uses to secure federal property. Now, they can't just go willy-nilly patrol the streets, but they can secure federal property and persons and personnel. So, yeah, you know what's coming, right?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jesus. Happy birthday to you. Today is Christmas. There will be a magic show at 0930. Chaplain Charlie will tell you about how the free world will conquer communism with the aid of God and a few Marines.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. How the free world will conquer communism right here in the United States of America with aid of God and a few Marines. Now, Facebook, that was under 60 seconds, a TikTok post. Chillax. Oh, we gotta love it. We gotta love it. We gotta love it. We gotta love it. How things are just shaping up all around us. So here's another one. So Donald Trump held an office where he signed an executive order on Christmas Eve. This is what it says. It says, this is the President of the United States just signed an order revoking Chris Kerb's security clearance and has directed AG Pam Bundy to investigate him for his role to overthrow the U.S. government on November 3rd, 2020. Kerbs was a head of the CISA who weaponized his position and conspired with the FBI and big tech to censor truth, evidence, proof, and testimony about the 2020 election. Seditious conspiracy doesn't end until the last acts of the conspiracy. And who designed November 3rd, 2020 as the most secure election, or designated as the most secure election in history? He did. Freedom of Information Act documents obtained by investigating journalist Yadu Miller through the Freedom Administration reveal, I don't know if I said the name right, but this guy. The secret meeting organized on Election Day, November 3rd, 2020, by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, involving Dominion officials and the FBI. Dominion is now owned by a Republican election activist. I just want to keep pointing that out. To discuss the overthrow of the United States government with private companies and Democratic groups. Oh. So Donald Trump just denied him his security clearance and requested the DOJ go after him. That's what is happening. And here's another post that Donald Trump shared on X. Heaven is huge. It never gets full. This is true. It's eternity. And a greater understanding of that, of infinite, needs to be understood by Christians. Ex-FBI agent says Bondi has a slam dunk conspiracy case against Obama's Fed for election meddling. Oh, yeah. Retired FBI agent who assembled major crime cases for years says Attorney General Pam Bundy has a slam dunk conspiracy case to prosecute former federal agents and prosecutor for election meddling, for relentlessly pursuing Donald Trump for political purpose while protecting prominent Democrats like Hillary Rodham Clinton in the face of demanding evidence. Jonathan Gilliam, a retired FBI agent and Navy SEAL, told Just the News No Noise television show that Trump should name a justice czar to coordinate both prosecution and policy fixes after documents turned over to Congress by Bundy and FBI Director Kash Patel showed that the FBI agents were repeatedly thwarted from pursuing corruption allegations against Clinton and her family foundations. No reasonable prosecutor would prosecute. The agents were overruled when they told prosecutors there was no probable cause to raid Trump's home in Florida. It was the same cast of characters every time, Gillum said. We had a tremendous amount of evidence that they were trying to create evidence and falsify evidence to go after Trump. Now we see that they were trying to stop investigations and get rid of real evidence for the purpose of protecting Clintons. I think this really does lead to bigger charges such as conspiracy to overthrow an election. I would say potentially treason, if you could put that in there, but definitely sedition, he added. Gilliam suggested that Trump department treat the key players accused of weaponizing law enforcement and intelligence powers just like drug cartel or mafia family. And I think that's what's coming. These are a group of people that continue to come up in one case of building cases against Trump, falsifying information, but now it shows that the same people were conspiring to do a second overall crime, a second conspiracy to protect the political candidate they agreed with, he said. I mean, honestly, if this was a mafia case and we had this clear cut of example of a group of people committing 2 or more crimes for the furtherance of a political group or their enterprise, this would have been a slam dunk case for any U.S. attorney. So I think this is something that they should take a look at, Gilliam claimed. This is years of individuals working their way up, getting together, being pulled up and put together so they could conspire to let me read that again slower so you can get what he's saying. This is years of individuals working their way up the ladder in government and getting together or being pulled up the ladder in government and then put together so they can conspire to stop one individual from becoming president and push the other person forward, he added. Gilliam's comments came the same week that Assistant Attorney General Hermit Dillon told Just News No Noise television show that she believes there's enough evidence to pursue a conspiracy case alleging that federal agents and state prosecutors conspired, Fannie, to infringe and James the civil liberties of Trump and his MAGA followers. So that's something Donald Trump shared on Truth, was that article right there. The Clintons aren't competent to stand trial. The Clintons may take, they may just have episodes and not be able to. They might not be able to be present because they're taking a dirt nap. And then let's see here. That's the one I was looking for earlier. Let's see. And then this one here. This is so there's another lawsuit happened, a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. Judicial Watch sues tarnished Secret Service for records on how Code Pink crashed Trump dinner. Judicial Watch sues Secret Service under Freedom of Information Act for records that could shed light on what it knew about pro-Palestinian Code Pink protesters who crashed President Trump's dinner with administration officials September 9th at Joe's Seafood Prime Steak and Stone Crab Restaurant. The lawsuit seeks internal emails and texts among officials in the Presidential Protective Division regarding the presence of Code Pink protesters at the restaurant, and emails between Secret Service officials and any email account with Code Pink Dominion and any agency allegedly ignored Judicial Watch September 10 FOIA request. Both the Secret Service and the FBI have transmitted records when it comes to protecting President Donald Trump. Judicial Watch Tom Fenton said. Judicial Watch noted its prior FOIA lawsuits for records related to alleged would-be Trump assassin Thomas Matthew Crooks, security for Trump's rallies where Crooks allegedly struck, and potential increased protective services for Trump security detail before attempted assassination at the rally. So that's the end of the story. So he's asking how Code Pink got in there. Let me tell you something. When the president shows up anywhere, it is a pain in the hindquarters to get in. When I went to the Turning Point USA rally in Detroit with Charlie Do Not Talk podcast guy, when I went there, it was impossible to get in. It was bad. I mean, what beforehand with all the, I had press access and everything. We go anywhere we wanted to go beforehand. Afterhand, couldn't get in the building. Took 3 hours to get in the building. It was insane. It was insane. It was crazy. But these people could get in and protest Donald Trump at this restaurant? Nah, that's because they were let in. There was no other reason for them to be there, no other way for them to be there. They were let in. And that's what Tom Fenton wants to know about. That's what he wants to know about. So let me see here. What else do I have that I think we need to talk about before we go? There's a ton of stuff. People are talking about insurance. I got stories on insurance, but I think we're pretty much done. There's a whole lot more. Go check out my Telegram page. A whole lot more going on in California, in Minneapolis, in New York, and many other blue states. And we're going to find out. It's about to be revealed. We're in the season, I think, right at the beginning, where God, I think Mike said it earlier, God has taken his hands off the dam, and the dam's about to burst, and it's all going to come flooding out. And over the next several months, we're going to see massive increase in all of this stuff. Silver is now trading at 76.47. Gold's at 45.71. We'll see where that goes. You skipped the Candace segment. I don't want to talk about Candace. Jews, I can talk about Candace. So, are you ready? Turning Point USA killed Charlie Kirk. Erica Kirk killed Charlie Kirk, and Jews are bad. There we go. There's Candace Owens. You're happy now? Does that make you feel better? And we know you love her. We got that. It's cool. She's making a fool of herself. By the way, let me just say this. There's been prophetic word calling out Candace Owens and others, the ilk, that you need to repent now. You need to recant now, and you need to change your story now, because the time of grace ends in the new year. And God ain't playing. And he's going to take care of this situation. We are exiting the time of grace that God has given all the players in this to repent and make their life right before God. And we're crossing over to the second half. Pharaoh, the first 5 times, hardened his heart towards God's people. But the second 5 times, God hardened his heart, that God's will will be done. And I'm saying to Candace and the others, you are leaving, as the new year comes, you are leaving the era of grace and moving into the era of God's judgment and punishment, his joy, so to speak. And it may get really, really bad for you. So take advantage of it now while you can. I'm just saying. Mike says you'll be able to see the shift in January. I talked about it when Candace and Erica had the meeting. I said you're going to see a shift, not in what Candace says, but how people react to what Candace says. And by God, you're seeing it. Just go look at X or TikTok. It's all over the place. It's going to get extremely uncomfortable for people who are on the wrong side of God. And for those of us that are on the right side of God, who have stood our ground, who have said what God has told us to say in the season God has told us to say it, who have pointed out what's wrong, God says that there will be advancement for you. Now, what does that mean? I'm not a health and wealth prosperity preacher in any form, because I've read the Bible. I've seen what happened to the disciples. But God says that he's removing those that have stood in his way in politics, in Hollywood, in entertainment, and in religion, to make way for those that he's rising up for this season, who have stood in obscurity and proclaimed what God has told them to proclaim in regarding to all these issues, including the Jews. And you're about to see a massive shift in that. Major platforms will cease to exist. Other platforms leadership will be decimated. Major religious organizations will cease to exist. You need to watch, God, You need to watch any inherited organization in religion. You need to watch any major religious organization that has been inherited, that a father or a family or whatever it is, God ordained them and they became great before God and country. But they've gone on to be with the Lord, or they've gone on to retirement or whatever the case is, and their kids have inherited the ministry. God says, do not. I anointed your dad for this, but I did not anoint you. You're holding a seat that is not yours. And God's going to remove you like he removed Saul. How did Saul get removed? It's coming. That is coming. Very soon. Get ready. God's about to move. The season of grace is over, and now the season of punishment comes. I have more to say on this. I still haven't got it all together. I will do a show on that subject sometime soon when God gets it all straightened out in my head. But those days are coming, whether we like it or not. And I'm telling you, any organization, any religious organization or ministry where a child has taken over for a parent, watch those organizations. With that, I'm out. You guys have a great weekend. See you all Monday. And we'll finish off the year and get ready for the new year and what God's about to do. Patriot Mike is out.